Before we start this case up again, Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Lubin, did you want to call up the case we had on for tomorrow and put it on for today and discuss it now, or do you want to do that later? Or you mentioned at the end of yesterday that you wanted to.
If you wouldn't mind doing it now, sure.
Mr. Lubin, do you want to? Yes, it's just a status tomorrow morning. You waived her presence continually, I think.
We waived her presence previously in writing, and it's a status. There's a lot of stuff in this case that some of the DNA is just recently, now finally been provided, I think, to the state and then to us. So we would ask that you just reset it for another status. I'd say 90 days, but if you want 60, that's fine with me.
Either one's fine with the state, Your Honor. There's going to be extensive depositions, some travel involved. Understandable. It's not, 2 to 3 months is definitely fine with the state.
Okay. So I'm just looking at dates here. So have any depositions been taken?
No.
Okay, so those are going to be starting now?
Well, they're going to be starting when we get through now. There's a huge amount of discovery. A lot of it is science. A lot of the witnesses that are still alive are not local. We're starting the process. I mean, we don't intend to dawdle with it, but there's a lot of complications on this case that you wouldn't have on a
I understand. July 10th at 9 o'clock. How does that sound?
Very good. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes.
July 10th, 9 o'clock. Brittany, strike it from tomorrow, please. And that's for status. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Hope everybody had a good break. Moving on to the defense's next witness.
Detective Kenny Smith, Your Honor.
Okay.
Just want to make sure, 9 o'clock?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, sir. You may inquire. Yes, please.
Thank you. Detective, can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Kenny Smith.
And where are you employed, Mr. Detective Smith?
Currently work for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed there?
Just a little over 17 years.
What's your current assignment with the Sheriff's Office?
Currently assigned to the Homeland Division, Airport Division, Homeland Security, I'm sorry.
Okay. And prior to being assigned to the airport, where were you assigned in October of 2015?
I was assigned to the Violent Crimes Division, Homicide Unit.
Okay. And how long had you been assigned there?
About 11 years.
Okay. Calling your attention back to October of 2015, what was your role in the investigation of Officer Raja?
I was a lead detective for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. And as the Sheriff's Office lead detective, what were your duties?
My duties were to fully investigate this along with the team and to correlate and collate all the information and keep track of it.
Okay, when you say fully investigate, did you interview witnesses? What did you do specifically?
Interviewed witnesses, reviewed data, reviewed all of the scientific reports that would come through.
All right, did you respond to the scene?
I did, yes, sir.
And at the scene, what did you do?
At the scene, I conducted the walkthrough with Officer Raja. I also spoke with my supervisors and just did a general overview of the scene, looking at evidence that was presented there.
Okay. Now, you said you were the lead investigator for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Were there other lead investigators in the case?
There was other investigators. I guess there would be a lead for the State Attorney's Office, and
Okay, and who was that?
I believe that was Tommy Wills.
Okay. And did you and Investigator Wills share information back and forth as you gained information?
We did, yes, sir.
Did you also share information with Mark Anderson
Yes.
and Billy Frazier?
Yes, sir.
And who were they?
Mark Anderson is the investigator for the State Attorney's Office that oversees critical incidents, and Billy Frazier is the chief investigator.
Okay. And so as you developed information in the case, you shared it amongst all the lead investigators, correct?
Them and others, yes.
All right. So I want to call your attention back to the early morning hours of October the 30th, 2015.
Yes, sir.
All right. And where, if any place, did you go on that evening?
In the early hours of the morning, myself and Sergeant Karpinski and CSI Keith Thomas and Thomas Wills, we all went to PGA and I-95 at, I believe, 2:30 in the morning.
And what was the purpose of your responding there?
We were going to go and do a reflectivity test with the firearm that was collected there from Mr. Jones, I believe, Mr. Jones's firearm.
Okay, and just briefly, I'm sure she's aware, but just a quick explanation of what the reflectivity test was.
We were there trying to see if the gun would reflect any kind of light.
Okay, and you used the actual gun recovered from Mr. Jones, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did someone order that test?
I believe so.
Do you know who it was?
I don't recall exactly who, but it was above me.
Okay, and were you able to complete the test on October the 30th?
No, sir.
Why not?
News media kind of
Okay,
trumped us on it.
all right, and did there come a time when you responded back to that area to conduct the test?
We went back, I believe it was 2 o'clock, 2:15 in the morning on November 4th.
Okay, and during the test, who held the firearm owned by Mr. Jones?
Tommy Wills.
Did any other investigators hold the firearm that night?
Not that I recall.
Where did Investigator Wills stand during this test?
I believe we tried to do it as best as we could to where we believe the incident happened. So it was right in the general area of where the incident happened on the off-ramp, southbound 95 off-ramp to PGA.
Okay, and did you do different locations or you just kind of stayed in one place?
We tried to stay right in that same location.
Okay, and what were your personal observations of the test?
I could see the firearm, and I could also see that it was definitely reflecting light.
Reflecting red light?
Yes, sir.
Judge, I'm going to offer the witness these pictures. They've stated as previously stipulated to their admission.
Okay,
That work?
sure. Are these the photos that were already entered as Exhibit 1A through H or different photos?
These
Okay.
are 9A through K.
Okay. State, 9A through K.
Can you take a look at the pictures for me? No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, okay. Comes into evidence, thanks. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as you're looking at the pictures, around the muzzle of the weapon, do you see the red light?
On these pictures, yes, sir, I do.
And do these pictures fairly and accurately depict the muzzle of the gun as it looked that night?
Yes, sir.
Was this test, who took these pictures, do you know?
I believe it was, yes, Keith Thomas.
And did he also take a video that night?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. Excuse me one second.
Can I see the photo, sir?
Yes, we am.
No further questions, Judge.
Cross-examination, State.
Good morning, Detective.
Good morning, ma'am.
I want to just ask you, you said that when you guys went back out there on November 4th of 2015, you indicated that you went back to do the light reflectivity test, and you tried to get to the general area as best you could, right?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Now, but when you went out there on that night, the Corey's car wasn't there,
No, ma'am.
right? And the defendant's van wasn't there,
No, ma'am.
right? And so all of those variables that came into play the night that this defendant shot Corey Jones, all that stuff was gone.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? And so the only thing that you could do when you went out there to try to conduct this light reflectivity test is to surmise or approximate or guess where Corey could have been standing based on what this defendant told you.
Correct.
Right? Now, at the time that, and let me go back for a minute, when you were lead investigator on this case for Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
Yes, ma'am.
So when the actual shooting of Corey Jones, when that took place, you actually responded out there in the early morning hours.
Yes, ma'am.
Of the day the shooting happened, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you were out there with crime scene and all those other law enforcement personnel?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you were out there with them, they actually do a thorough investigation, they collect evidence, they take photographs, they measure distances, they do all of these things while they're out there, right?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Now, at the time that they were out there during that period of time, you all didn't ask crime scene or anyone from crime scene to put an X where the defendant said Corey Jones was standing, right?
We did not know.
Okay. So you didn't ask crime scene to put an X where we believe where the defendant said he was standing, right?
Correct.
And you didn't do any of that because you didn't anticipate that you were going to be going back out there doing a light reflectivity test
Correct.
at that time.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So everything that relates to this light reflectivity test, all of this is supposition and speculation because no one knows whether or not Corey was standing in the spot that Investigator Wills was standing when he was pointing that gun, correct?
Correct.
No one knows whether or not the defendant was standing where he says he was standing during the time the incident actually happened, right?
Correct.
So what we have here is what you testified on direct to, which is we did our best to try to place ourselves in the general area.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what I want to talk to you about also, Detective Smith, is as lead investigator on this case, during the walkthrough of the defendant in this case, were you present?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you were there, did you actually take lead in conducting the walkthrough investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you talked with the defendant prior to going on camera, well, actually not prior to going on camera, but when you went on camera, did you ask the defendant whether or not he felt that he was emotionally able and capable of performing a walkthrough of what happened the night of the shooting?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, and what did he tell you?
He said he was up to the task.
Okay. And he didn't have to agree to do that, did he?
No, ma'am, he didn't.
That was totally up to him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So now a walkthrough consists of you.
Your Honor, I object.
Based on, beyond the scope of direct? Overruled for now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. A walkthrough consists of you speaking with the defendant and having him walk through what took place,
Correct.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
When the defendant, was telling you what happened during the incident, were you asking him, look, you tell us what happened? Did you put words in his mouth?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so everything that you told, that he told you came directly from him.
Yes, ma'am.
And anything that he said, and you responded to, was it your intent to clarify?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to look at his walkthrough.
I'm
And,
going to renew my objection.
Okay, you can approach.
Judge, may we approach,
Sure,
please?
yes, please, let's approach. Okay.
Thank you, Judge. Now, Detective Smith, what I want to do is get into you, I want to get into the walkthrough with you.
Okay.
1 second. And did you have an opportunity to, well, first of all, when you responded that morning of the incident, what time did you get there?
I was there, I believe, somewhere between 5:30, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. And what time did you start the walkthrough with the defendant in this case?
It's after 7 o'clock.
All right. Okay. Would it have been around 7:50?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now that's approximately what, almost 5 hours after the actual shooting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you a copy of his walkthrough.
Sure.
Thank you.
Defense, you have a copy of this, I gather?
That is a copy of his transcribed walkthrough. Now, when you were out there the day of the incident, Detective Smith, did you know whether or not there was a phone that Corey had dropped on the floorboard right against the driver's side, on that driver's side floorboard?
Are you talking prior to the walkthrough?
Prior to the walkthrough, did you know that?
I don't recall. I don't believe so.
Okay. Did you know that there was an open line during that time? When you were going through the walkthrough with the defendant that morning, did you know whether or not the phone call that Corey Jones had made to AT&T had actually been recorded? The entire incident, for the most part, had been recorded.
No, ma'am, we didn't know about it at that time.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what is going to be, Judge, I believe it's going to be Stage 2.
Brittany, is that correct? Okay,
May I approach the witness, Judge?
sure.
Do you recall this photo, Detective Smith?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. And can you tell, Your Honor, what we're looking at here?
I believe this is Mr. Jones's cell phone. It was on the driver's side floorboard
Okay.
of his vehicle.
Okay, and does it fairly and accurately depict the way that it was lying that morning?
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
incident? Okay, Judge, this time it will offer into evidence, Stage 2.
Defense? Okay, comes into evidence, Exhibit 2, the photo.
So at the time that you did that walkthrough, you had no idea that that phone was there and that when he shot Corey, that it was continuing to pick up what was going on?
Correct.
Okay. So now I want to, at some point though, during your investigation, did you learn that there was a phone call from AT&T with an open line?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to listen to it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And were there different versions of the phone call? For instance, you got the phone call as it was from AT&T, and then there was an enhanced version that was made as well?
I believe so at some point. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, after listening to that phone call, do you recall the defendant, as the incident began, do you recall Corey saying, huh?
Yes.
Do you recall Corey saying, yeah, I'm good, I'm good?
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
recall that? And do you recall the defendant saying, really?
Yes, ma'am.
And then do you recall the defendant saying, get your effing hands up?
Yes, ma'am.
And then do you recall Corey saying, hold on?
Yes, ma'am.
And at that point, Corey's voice is kind of raised, almost in a panic state at that point where he says, hold on.
Yes, ma'am.
And then do you then recall the defendant saying, get your effing hands up again?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, I'm going to object to her leading the witness into what she's trying to get. And if she's going to ask him open-ended questions, she can do that, but she's gone beyond the scope of my direct. And in her cross, she's now taking it to a totally different direction.
Okay. Just as we discussed at sidebar, Ms. Ellis, you can ask him open-ended questions, sure.
And do you recall the defendant saying, show me your effing hands once more?
Yes, ma'am.
A total of 3 times.
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Now, I want to direct your attention to the walkthrough that you conducted with him.
Okay.
And I'd like you to turn to, first of all, page 13 of his walkthrough.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, if you look at page 13 of his walkthrough, and I'd like you to go to the line where it says, second I said police, he jumped back, and I clearly remember him drawing and pointing a gun at me. Do you see that area? And if not, I can give you mine that I have tabbed.
If you could. Okay, I see it. Yes, ma'am.
You see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, now further down on that page 13, do you see, what's that last sentence that he tells you?
In that long paragraph,
Yes, sir.
the last sentence is, and I immediately just shouted, drop the gun, and sighs, I'm sorry, that's like.
Okay. Now, you didn't say anything. Now, that's the first time in his walkthrough that he starts to talk about what commands he gave to Corey, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'd like you to go to page 15 of his walkthrough, please.
Yes, ma'am.
And on page 15, beginning with, in that long paragraph where he's talking, and he says, saw him draw the gun right at me, right after I said the word police. Can you finish that sentence? You see what I'm talking about, Detective Smith?
I think so.
And if not, I can show you mine.
Hey, man, please, can I help you? That sentence?
Further down.
And I saw him draw the gun right at me,
Further down.
right after I said the word police, and it was just like, fuck. That sentence?
And further down from that.
You want me to continue after that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was just like I kind of got like caught with my pants down at that point. Further?
Yes.
And it just immediately, it's like I apologize. He becomes emotional. It's just like, you know, your family flashed in front of you, your kids flashed in front of you, and you're just like, fuck. And it's just, and just immediately I drew down. I was like, drop the gun, drop the gun. And he didn't, he was right there.
Okay.
Further?
And if you would go down further to where it begins with, and I put my code in.
Okay.
Well, actually, start right above that. Actually, start above that where it says, and he didn't, he was right there. Right after he told you, he said, drop the gun, drop the gun.
Okay. And he didn't, and he was right there. And you want me to continue from there?
Yes, sir.
And I remember pulling the trigger, I think 2 or 3 times, and he started running. And as he was running, I had my cell phone, and I dialed, and I still remember putting my code in. And just like this, I had the gun, and I'm keeping an eye on this guy. Continue?
Yes, sir.
And I put my code in and dialed 911, and I called dispatch right, because my radio was in the van. Continue?
Continue, please.
Okay. And the whole time, I'm like giving him commands. I'm yelling and screaming at the top. I'm like, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun.
Okay.
And
So now, this is the second time that he's telling you he's given commands.
correct,
And he says nothing about, he said, show me your hands.
correct.
So now I'd like you to go to page 17. And I'd like you to look at the line that begins with, I don't, honestly, I was screaming at the top of my lungs.
Okay, ma'am. I have it.
Okay. And what did he tell you then?
He said, I don't, honestly, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was screaming, drop the, and the only thing I can think of was like I was saying, drop the gun. I announced myself as the police. Why the fuck is this guy pointing a gun at me?
Okay.
What the-
And at that point in time, he doesn't say to you that he said anything about, I said to him, show me your hands, show me your hands, show me your hands, correct?
Correct, ma'am.
And this is the third time he's telling you that he's giving commands, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'd like you to go to page 25.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'd like you to start with at the very beginning where he starts speaking, he started running on the grass.
Okay. Want me to read the whole thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He started running on the grass and paused. And if I'm thinking and I start, and this is where I grabbed my phone and I started running after him with my gun still pointing in his direction, screaming. And I was calling 911 and I was yelling. It was like, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs.
Okay. Never says anything about he gave commands to for Corey to show him his hands, correct?
Correct.
Now, I'd like you to go down further on that page where at the end it says, yeah, the big clump.
Okay.
And if you could read that first and second sentence there.
Said, yeah, the big clump.
Sorry, what page is that again?
That's page 25.
Where are you?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, where are you?
Oh,
At the very last paragraph.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
he stated, yeah, the big clump, just where the ditch is right there in front of it, kind of like. Read further?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He was in that area, and that's when he did the spin. Then I was yelling, like, drop the gun, drop the gun.
Okay. And at this time, the entire time that he's telling you, he's saying to Corey, drop the gun, he's also telling you he's on the phone with 911 while all this is going on, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you determined that that was not true.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like you to go to page 42.
Okay.
Okay. And if you can start at the very beginning and read to lungs.
Read to where, ma'am?
At the bottom, where
Okay.
it starts with, yes, I discharged it in the, and if you could read that all the way down to where it ends with the word lungs.
Okay. Yes, I discharged it in this is what I'm saying. It's like when he was running and I was going after him, I was yelling. I was like, drop the gun, I'm going to fucking kill you. Drop the gun. And I'm yelling at this guy to drop the gun at the top of my lungs.
Okay. And if you could finally go to page 48.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you could just read that entire paragraph where he starts there. And I completely go over.
Okay. Just on this page?
Yes, sir, at the bottom of page 48.
Okay. And I can, excuse me, and I completely go over and I'm like, he's like, and he starts, hey man, he jumps out and he's like, hey man, I'm okay. I'm like, hey man, cops. Hey man, police, can I help you? And he immediately, hey man, please, can I help you? And he draws the gun on me. I said, drop the gun, and bang, bang, bang. And he starts running, and I start chasing him. And I'm calling 911.
Okay. So it's at that point where he is near the car, he is near Corey's vehicle, where we can hear what's going on through the open line. And this is where he's saying, he said on numerous occasions, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun.
Correct.
And he also said several times that he was calling 911 as he is in pursuit of Corey, who is running away from him, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Try not to give you anything extra.
Now, when you were speaking, when you guys got done with the with the walkthrough, well, before I get to that, let me ask you this. That walkthrough, do you know how long that walkthrough lasted?
I believe it was about an hour, maybe a little more.
Okay. And during the entire time of that walkthrough, Detective Smith, not one time, we've just outlined 7 times in different areas when he is recounting what happened that morning. Not one time does he ever say that I said to him, "Show me your hands." Does he?
Correct.
So now, when you guys are, when you get to the point where you are, for the most part, completing your walkthrough, do you then have him go and sit in a vehicle or sit somewhere?
After the,
Do you collect his gun? Do you collect the
yes,
gun
we
that
went
he
and
had, his
collected his,
weapon? I'm
yeah,
sorry,
we collected the
what was it?
firearms.
Okay, so you collect the firearm?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And once you collect his firearm, did you yourself actually, after collecting the firearm and everything that you needed to collect from him, did you yourself actually look inside of his van?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what is going to be marked as a composite, states 3A and B. Judge, my purpose witness.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask you if you recognize these photographs. Detective Smith, do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. And we'll call that States Composite 3A.
Okay.
And can you tell, Your Honor, what we're looking at on States Composite 3A?
This is Officer Raja's tack vest as it was in his van.
Okay. And this is another angle of that. Can you tell, Your Honor, what we're looking at in States 3B?
Interior front portion of Officer Raja's van that day.
And do these photographs fairly and accurately show, the vest and the tactical gear that was contained in the defendant's van that morning of the incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Just this time I will offer them into evidence as States Composite 3 and B.
No, Judge.
Comes into evidence, Exhibit 3A and B.
Now, these 2 photographs that I just showed you, Detective Smith, on this tactical vest, what's on here is police, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And it has his name, Officer N. Raja,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And although we can't see the back of the vest on this photograph, on 3B, is that the back of that same vest, or is that still the front?
I can't really tell.
Okay. Well, are you familiar with these tactical vests?
I am, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the tactical vests, they have police insignia on both sides, right?
They should, yes, ma'am.
Says police on the front and says police on the back,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And so this is the vest that he could have put on that morning before he jumped out of his van, correct?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Now, did you, other than collecting the gun, his weapon from him, and the magazine from him, did you collect any other evidence from him?
Him directly, yes, ma'am. We collected his cell phone also.
Okay. And where was he when you collected that cell phone?
He was in the sheriff's office command bus.
All right. And what was he doing?
At that point, I had requested for him to come into our command bus, so he's just kind of sitting there.
All right. And when you asked him for the phone, did he provide it to you? Did he say anything when he provided the phone to you?
He did, yes, ma'am. I took a tape statement while we were doing so.
Okay. And what did he say to you when you took the phone from him?
He gave me permission that we could take possession of the phone, so I completed a property receipt and had him sign it. Also got permission from him so that we would be able to download it. And I also asked him if he had been using the phone since between the shooting and that current time, and he stated he had been.
Okay. All right. And when he told you that he had been using the phone from the time of the shooting to the time that you took the phone, did he tell you what he had been doing on the phone?
He did. I had asked specifically if he had been on any kind of social media or news websites or something to that effect. He stated he was. He also stated he made a few phone calls. He called his wife, which is expected, and he didn't really receive any calls, but some people have been calling in.
Okay. So he told you he was on social media while he was just kind of sitting there.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Now, Detective Smith, once you listened to the open line from AT&T, and when you compared it to the walkthrough sworn statement that the defendant gave you, did you come to the conclusion that the defendant had lied during his walkthrough?
Objection.
Grounds? Sir?
Mr. Brown, Judge, I hear you.
Yes, grounds?
She's characterizing the witness's statement as a lie. She can't do that.
You can ask him whether or not he believes it to be consistent with the walkthrough, to be consistent with the AT&T open line.
She's characterizing.
I'll rephrase it, Judge.
She can rephrase. That's what I'm,
I'll rephrase it. Once you listened to the AT&T open line call, and after listening to his statement, did you come to the conclusion that Officer Raja had in fact given you inconsistent sworn testimony based on what you heard from the AT&T open line call?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, as lead investigator in this case, once you got done with everything, you compiled all of your reports, all of the information, and what did you do with it?
We give it all to the state attorney's office for review.
Okay. And so at that point, when you give it to the state attorney's office for review, at that point, you had not made a determination, you had not requested an arrest warrant in this case, right?
No, ma'am.
You provided everything that you collected to our office.
Yes, ma'am.
But you did have an opinion as to whether or not the shooting in the case was justifiable.
I'm not allowed to give my opinion, though.
Well, when you gave your deposition, when you were asked whether or not you were in agreement with the charges, what was
Correct.
your answer?
I believe.
Objection.
Oh,
He's not qualified to give that opinion, Judge.
overruled. He can answer.
I agreed with the charges. Yes, ma'am.
Judge, may I have a moment, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Detective Smith. I'm done, Judge.
Okay, redirect?
Excuse me.
Yes. Detective Smith, you were assigned to the Violent Crimes Division, correct?
Yes, sir. Sir,
And-
sorry.
I'm sorry?
I said yes, sir. I'm sorry. Said yes, ma'am.
That's all right. And in the Violent Crimes Division, you also, in the scope of that, you were assigned to investigate officer-involved shootings, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many officer-involved shootings would you say you investigated?
10, give or take.
All with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
All involving Sheriff's Office deputies?
No, I've also done one for Riviera Beach Police Department also.
Okay. And in that case, you were the lead investigator in these?
Yes,
And in your capacity as a lead investigator, you participated in other walkthrough interviews, correct?
correct.
Right. And in those walkthrough interviews, similar to this, the witness officer gave a walkthrough statement to you and other investigators, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in those other walkthrough statements, isn't it true that oftentimes officers get it wrong?
Yes,
They don't get all the facts right, do they?
correct.
Right. In this case, and Ms. Ellis asked you about some of the statements that Officer Raja gave you at the scene. One of the statements that he gave you at the scene was, he described that the gun had a laser, didn't he?
Correct.
And he was specific about what type of laser, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
He said it was a Laser Max laser.
Correct.
And he said that because it was the only type of laser that fit in the guide rod, correct?
Yes,
And he said that it was flashing at him. Isn't that right?
correct.
And later on, and he said that without having knowledge that, of having seen the gun yet, right?
He had seen the gun, apparently, from what he said earlier.
Um,
Not
if you-
from us.
To who? Who did he say that to?
Well, he told that to us during the statement.
All right, do you have the deposition, or do you have your walkthrough statement still there with you?
I'm sorry.
Do you have the walkthrough statement still there with you?
No, I do not. Kind of have my copy, but
Maybe I didn't answer my question clearly enough.
okay.
After the shooting took place, and while he was doing the walkthrough, had he seen the gun at the conclusion of the incident?
No, sir. Not
Okay, all right. So, and after it was over, we determined that there wasn't a laser on it, right?
Correct.
And that was the reason you went back out to the scene that night, correct?
Correct.
All right. And when you went back out to the scene, Ms. Ellis is right, the van wasn't there and the SUV wasn't there, but the traffic light was there, right?
Yes, sir.
And Corey Jones's gun was there, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And when you looked at the gun, you saw the red light flashing off the muzzle, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Now, she also asked you about the positioning of where you might have been when you did this light reflectivity test, didn't she?
Yes, sir.
And you were there with crime scene investigator Thomas, right?
Correct.
And crime scene they do a great job for the PBS, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And they take measurements,
Yes, sir.
and they use what's called a Leica scan to do exact measurements from different positions.
Correct.
And you've seen these done before, right?
I have.
Right. And when you took Sergeant Karpinski and Investigator Wills and Thomas out there, you relied on the information that was gleaned from CSI to find a position in order to take this test, correct?
Correct.
All right. And once you took the test and took the pictures, that's what came out, what I showed you in those photos, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Ellis asked you about the commands that were given to, or that you heard, or that you didn't hear. You did hear Officer Raja say, drop, didn't you?
I did, yes, sir.
All right. And also, when Mr. Jones said, I'm good, you heard that?
I did.
Right. And so when someone says, I'm good, the inference is the other person said, are you good? Right? So if I answered you, I'm good, the inference is that you asked me, am I good, right?
Yes.
All right. And that's not aggressive, is it?
No, sir.
And you're not a psychologist, are you?
No, sir.
And you have no training in what takes place in the human body or the mind that helps you remember things or not remember things, right?
Nothing specific, no, sir.
But you were here yesterday during all the testimony?
Correct.
And you heard the doctors, the qualified individuals talk about, sometimes they get it wrong, right?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me one second. No further questions, thank you.
Regarding what aspect? I'm sorry, what?
That's okay, Your Honor.
Are you sure? Do you want to approach, either of you? No? Okay, if you don't want to, that's fine. If you don't want to, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So during the walkthrough, how would you characterize Officer Raj's demeanor during the walkthrough?
He was upset and concerned.
And you said you did 10 other walkthroughs before regarding officer-involved shootings, is that correct?
Yeah.
Approximately?
Yes.
What, I mean, in other walkthroughs, what is normally the demeanor of the officer that's actually being
I
questioned?
apologize, Your Honor. Can you just speak in the microphone?
Sorry. What, is that better? Okay. Would you characterize Officer Raj's demeanor in this case similar to officers in other walkthroughs who were recounting events that had happened during the shooting?
Yes, ma'am. It was very similar.
Very, very similar?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Anything further? Defense? State?
Yeah, Judge, I'll just take that brief follow-up real quick.
Okay, sure.
Can counsel ask you, sometimes you get it wrong. based on everything you heard yesterday, that sometimes they just get it wrong, right?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Now, he told you in no uncertain terms that he was on the phone with 911 the entire time he fired that gun at Corey, right?
Correct, I believe so.
That is not true, correct?
Correct.
That is not something that someone would say unless they actually did it, right?
Correct.
And if they didn't do it, then that means they're not being truthful, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further, Judge.
Mr. King?
Briefly, Judge.
Sure.
So he did call 911, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
All right. He just got the time wrong, correct?
Correct.
He put it in the wrong place.
Possibly, yes, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please step down. Defense, what would you like to do next?
CSI Thomas.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Thomas. Can you say your name for the record?
Thomas, Thomas.
All right. And where are you currently employed?
I'm sorry, sir.
Where are you currently employed?
At the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
And in what capacity are you employed there?
Crime scene investigator.
All right. And how long have you been a crime scene investigator for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office?
Approximately 10 years.
Okay. And what was your assignment on October the 18th of 2015?
To document a shooting scene on the off-ramp from 95 South to PGA Boulevard.
Okay. How were you made aware of the incident that evening?
My supervisor, Racklin, notified me of the shooting.
Okay. And if you can please give the court a brief synopsis of your activities and duties that evening.
On that morning,
That morning, I'm sorry.
I responded to the scene, photographed the scene overall, conducted
Phones, please, everybody.
a search for any ballistics evidence, anything that may have been dropped by any persons on the scene, the positions of vehicles. I delegated some of the tasks out to other investigators, and I conducted a laser scan of the area to thoroughly map it, and I operated a video camera during the interview conducted by Detective Smith.
Is that all you did?
And I collected evidence.
Did you have any duties surrounding the defect in the palm tree?
I did. I noticed there was a defect low on the palm tree. It appeared to be fresh, and it appeared to be consistent with possibly being shot. I photographed it and dug into it to attempt to extract any projectile which may be inside unsuccessfully.
Okay. Anything else you did?
I photographed Officer Raja and collected a sample of his DNA.
Is that it?
That's it for that
Okay.
morning.
On October the 30th, did you respond back to the scene with Sergeant Karpinski, Investigator Wills, Detective Smith?
I did.
And what happened on October the 30th?
I apologize.
That's okay. Can I help? You got it? Or can I help you?
I know that we had returned to the scene in reference to documenting whether the bright chrome of the pistol would be potentially reflecting the color of the traffic signal.
Okay, but that's the night you responded, or is that the night you responded and the media was there?
There was on the first attempt, that's what I'm looking for, because I don't
Okay.
the exact date. On the first attempt, the media was there, so we aborted the procedure and carried on a separate night.
Okay, and you responded back on November the 4th?
It was the November the 4th when we conducted the experiment.
Okay. So when you responded back, you videotaped, or did you videotape and take photographs?
Both stills and video.
All right. And where was the test conducted? Where on the roadway?
On the ramp in approximately the area of Mr. Jones' SUV.
And how did you determine the approximate area of Mr. Jones's SUV?
From having been there prior.
Did you test it in any other locations?
In that immediate vicinity, within a few steps in each direction, and with different angles toward the traffic signal.
Did you need the photos?
I have them. I can give them these, Judge. It's fine. Can I approach? I'm going to show them the photos again. Take a look at those for me.
These are the photos I took on November 4th.
And do those fairly and accurately represent or depict the scene as you recorded it that night, took those photos that night?
They do, to an extent. I was able to see better than the camera. Then that is typical. The camera cannot come close to the dynamic range of a human eye. So I took different photos with different exposure times and values to try to capture as much of the dynamic range as possible.
Okay, explain to the judge the difference between the camera and your naked eye.
In any given scene that we look into, in one scene, there may be detail in dark areas and detail in bright areas. In that range where we can perceive both details without being blinded in the bright areas and or completely blacked out in the dark areas is quite wide compared to a camera. If you were to try to photograph the same scene with a camera, if you have good detail in the shadows, then it's very likely for the detail in the highlights to be blown out, and vice versa. With a shorter exposure, you may get good detail in the highlighted areas, and the detail in the shadowed areas may be completely blacked out.
Okay. Now, the night that you took the pictures, and you've previously stated that it didn't look like a laser to you. Is that true?
I was already familiar with the gun not being equipped with a laser, so it didn't look like a laser to me at the time.
But the difference between the photos and what is captured by the naked eye, would you describe as vastly different?
Very different. Yes, very different. For example, the color, particularly with the green, you can see the contrast offered by the traffic signal as compared to the overall lighting, which is the street lights aren't a white light source like the sun would be. It's a dingy, orangey kind of color to begin with.
Okay. And during the course of these pictures, they were basically taken at they were stills. In other words, Investigator Wills, was he moving around?
He was moving. We did video clip also. These are obviously stills.
We saw the video clip.
Yes. We play it again, Judge. We don't have the equipment today.
I recall it.
Okay. But you were standing still, clearly.
I was.
All right. And your stationary position doesn't actually capture how the light would have glinted off the gun if you were moving and the gun was moving, correct?
There would be no way for me to get that exact.
Okay. 1 second, Judge.
Sure.
That's it, Judge. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Regarding the light reflectivity test, you said that you guys, well, you were the lead crime scene investigator in this case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so when you guys were out there the morning that the shooting occurred, you were documenting the scene, correct?
Correct.
You were taking measurements,
I was.
right? And you were taking photographs,
I was.
right? Now, and you were collecting evidence.
Yes, ma'am.
When you were out there the morning of the incident, where you were collecting the evidence before Corey's car was ever towed, taken away, before the defendant's vehicle was ever taken away, before anything was ever taken away from that scene, you weren't told at that point or at any point to place an X or place some type of marking where the defendant says he believes Corey was standing, correct?
Correct.
So you didn't do that, did you?
I did not.
And you weren't told to place an X or place some kind of marking in the area where the defendant claims he was standing at the time he claims he saw the gun, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't do that either, right?
I did not.
So when you went back out there for this light reflectivity test, what you did is, like you said on the rec, is you sort of put yourself in the immediate vicinity, correct?
Correct.
And that immediate vicinity, that means what you're saying is, well, we don't know exactly where he was because everything is gone and we didn't place any markers down. So all we can do at this point is just kind of go in kind of like the general area, correct?
Exactly. Correct.
And is that what you did?
Yes, ma'am.
And so when you talk about these different angles of how this gun was being held, there were several different positions where Mr. Wills was standing,
Correct.
correct? When this light reflectivity test was being done, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And there was stand here, and let's see if it reflects off the red light, right?
Correct.
Then it was stand here, and let's see if it reflects off the red light, right?
Correct.
And then it was stand here, and let's see if it reflects off the red light, right?
Correct.
So there are all these different angles just to see if you could somehow capture this red light on this chrome gun, right?
Exactly.
And this was done several times during that light reflectivity test, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so at some point, the light turned red, and lo and behold, in some area, you saw some kind of red light that was reflecting off the chrome gun, correct?
Correct.
Now, you said earlier that it didn't look like a laser to you.
Correct.
And you're familiar with guns,
I am.
and you're familiar with lasers.
I am.
Now, as part of your duties when you went out there, CSI Thomas, as I stated earlier, you took some photographs.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I want to show you a series, which I'm going to call States Composite 4A. Composite 4A through E, Judge.
Okay? Defense?
Judge, my first witness, please. All right. I'd like you to take a look at these photographs for me, CSI Thomas. And we'll start with 4A, and if we can just tell Your Honor what we're looking at here in 4A.
This would be the area between the two vehicles and orange evidence markers.
Okay. Now, in 4A, we see these two orange cones down there, right?
Yes, we do.
And who placed those cones down there?
Those were placed by Officer Raja.
Okay. And these two cones are representative of where he says that he was standing somewhere in between those two cones when he claims that Corey pointed the gun at him, correct?
Correct. Somewhere in that range between the two.
Somewhere in that range between those two. Okay. And we see Corey's door is right here,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Very close to where those cones are.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So that would be 4A. And what are we looking at here in 4B?
That is looking up the off-ramp.
Okay. And what do we have down here?
Stanchion markers.
Okay, and so the stanchion markers are these yellow things down here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how many are down, and let's start in this area here.
There are 3 in the near area.
Okay, and now those 3 stanchion markers, do they represent the casings that were collected from that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and this little, what you see here, is this, what is this right here?
That would be the rear bumper of Mr. Jones' vehicle.
Okay, and so now, did you take a measurement of that, you see that casing that's labeled under stanchion 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you take a measurement of that stanchion from from Corey's, the inside of Corey's door, where the defendant claims he was standing when he pointed the gun at him, and that first casing? Did you take a measurement?
If I may refer to my measurements I pulled from my scan.
Will it help refresh your recollection?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, may he refer to his? Sure.
The closest I would have to the door would be the left front tire to
Okay.
stanchion 1.
Okay, so you took so you actually didn't take, you actually did not take a measurement from where the defendant claims Corey was standing when he was pointing a gun at him. You actually started your measurement from the left rear tire of Corey's car.
I have a measurement to the left rear tire and the left front tire.
Okay, so from the left rear tire, how far is it from that left rear tire to stanchion 1?
6 feet 4 inches approximately.
Okay, and then how far is it from that left rear tire to stanchion 2?
Approximately 12 feet 10 inches.
And how far is it from that left rear tire to stanchion 3?
Approximately 17 feet 5 inches.
Okay. Now, you said that you also took other measurements from, you said the front of Corey Jones's car?
The
to
left.
stanchion 1?
Yes, ma'am.
And where would you have started that measurement from?
The measurements pulled from the laser scan were all taken from the position of the laser scan itself.
Okay.
The numbers that I have are extracted from that laser data from various points to various points, not to the laser itself.
Okay, all right. Okay. So that's going to be 4B. And now, what are we looking at here in composite 4C?
Stanchions 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, and did you measure distances of those and do stanchions 4, 5, and 6, do they reflect the casings that were found on the ground there?
Correct. Those are the location of the casings.
Okay, and what measurements did you take of those casings from Corey's vehicle to those casings? If any at all.
From the left rear tire to stanchion 5, approximately 46 feet 10 inches.
Okay.
To stanchion 4, approximately 47 feet 10 inches. And to stanchion 6, approximately 53 feet 11 inches.
Okay, all right. So that's even farther, so we're going farther away from we're going farther away from the cones that we saw in State's Composite 4A here. Stanchions 4, 5, and 6 are farther away, even farther than 1, 2, and 3 from the 2 cones that the defendant put down where he claims he was standing when the gun was pointed at him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I want to look at, actually before we get to State's 4D, did you take a measurement, CSI Thomas, from, well, first of all, are you aware of where the gun was located in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and where was it located?
This street sign here, it was near the base of that sign.
Okay, the base of that pole right there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did you take a measurement of where the gun was located from from Corey's vehicle to where the gun was located?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And where did you start that measurement from, if we're talking about from Corey's vehicle?
If we go from the left front tire, we have approximately 81 feet.
Okay. 81 feet from the front tire.
From the front, approximately 72 feet 6 inches from the left rear tire.
Okay. And do you see over here, it's kind of faint in the distance, this yellow covering here?
I do.
Okay, and what is that?
I believe there was a defect in the guardrail.
No, I'm talking about here.
Oh, that in the distance, that would be the yellow EMS blanket over Mr. Jones.
Okay. And now, did you take a measurement, did you take any measurements of, from where the gun was located, near this pole, to where Corey's body was laid to rest there?
Is there a recording going on right now?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I apologize. From Mr. Jones' head to the pistol was approximately 124 feet and 5 inches.
Okay. So from his head to where the gun is located is approximately 124 feet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you take any measurements from where his body was located to from the rear of his vehicle? Did you take a measurement from the rear of his vehicle to where his body was located?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what's the distance between from the rear of his vehicle to where his body was located?
From the right rear tire of the vehicle to Mr. Jones' head was 195 feet 1 inches.
Okay, 195. And that's from the rear vehicle. That's the rear tire.
Yes, ma'am. The right
And
rear.
that is not from from his driver's side open door.
Correct.
Did you take a measurement from his driver's side open door?
I did not.
Okay. I want to show you what is in State's Composite 4D. And what are we looking at here? What is the judge going to be looking at in this photograph?
This is a palm tree off the side of the ramp.
Okay. Now, this palm tree off the side of the ramp, what is this thing that's in this palm tree?
It appears to be a fresh defect.
Okay. And was it surmised that that defect could have come from one of the bullets fired from the defendant?
It was.
Okay. And this tree here, although what I'm showing you in 4D is the base of the tree, if we look back here at 4C, this palm tree, is that the same palm tree in the distance with that defect?
It is.
And I'm going to show you. Now, were you present during this walkthrough?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when he gave his walkthrough, he stated that it was, matter of fact, he said back in here where we see this palm tree with this defect and Corey's body right across from it,
Yes, ma'am.
he said somewhere back up in this area is where he claims that Corey did some sort of spin and turned around and pointed at him, right?
I believe so.
And you were present for that walkthrough.
I was.
And what we're looking at in 4E is what here?
That is Officer Raja as he was attired that morning.
Okay, and the attire is what?
A ball cap, t-shirt, blue jeans, and sneakers.
Okay. Is there any sort of insignia on the hat, the shirt, the jeans is there anything on his body that indicates or would be indicative of him being a police officer?
There's none.
And did he tell you that night that this is the exact way that he was dressed when he jumped out of his car?
He did.
Judge, this time state what offered into evidence states composite 4A through E.
Defense comes into evidence, Exhibit 4A through E.
Judge, if I can just have a moment, please.
Sure.
Let me just go back to what is, I can't remember if it was 4A, I think it's 4D, Mr. Thomas. And we're looking at the palm tree. This is the same palm tree in the distance here that has the defect.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Now, in this area, obviously, we see the yellow covering of Corey's body.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And along this tree line, is there a palm tree in that area? I'm sorry, a pine tree in that area?
There are multiple pine trees in that area.
Okay. And was there a pine tree in that area that was kind of like in between that palm tree and was Corey's body? Kind of like in between a pine tree and where that palm tree with that defect was?
It was.
Okay. And now that pine tree, did that pine tree have a defect in it as well?
I don't know exactly which tree had the defect. It wasn't discovered that morning.
Okay. So you guys didn't discover it that morning?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you take any sort of measurements of that pine tree from Corey's body?
I did not.
Okay. Did you take any sort of measurements from the pine tree from Corey's vehicle at all?
I did not.
Now, at some point, you did become aware, though, that the pine tree that the FBI actually cut the pine tree and took it because there was a bullet lodged in it, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And at some point, did you go back out to the scene and take a look at that pine tree for yourself?
I did not.
Okay. All right. Judge, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Very short.
Sure.
CSI Thomas, counsel was asking you about the different positioning that you had with the gun in order to get the red light. There's a myriad of millions of different possibilities of how the gun could have been pointed that night, right?
Absolutely.
All right. And what you were trying to, let me ask you, were you just trying to replicate it to see if it was possible?
That was the purpose of being out there, to see if it was possible that light reflecting off of the pistol from the traffic signal could look like a red light source.
And that's because he had said that in the walkthrough.
Correct. That's why we conducted the test.
Okay. And in terms of the palm tree and the pine tree, if you know, because I think you testified, didn't you testify that you didn't find that defect in the pine tree, correct?
I did not.
And the FBI found that defect some days later, right?
Correct.
Okay. And if you know, there's the palm tree where the body was, and then the pine tree was actually to the southwest of the body, correct? Where they found the second defect.
There were multiple pine trees. I'm not aware which was which.
All right. That's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. You can sit down. Defense?
Judge, we're going to rest at this time.
Okay. Can I see the parties up here just for a moment, please? All right, the defense is rested. State, would you like to call witnesses?
Yes, Judge. Say it will call Matthew Huntsberger.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good morning, sir.
Judge, if I can just have one moment.
Those photos, I'm sorry,
Yes, Your Honor.
these, do you have a copy of these? Yes. Okay, so I have a copy. Mr. King, would you like to have this copy?
Thank you, Judge.
I have my copy up here. Okay. While he's doing that, what is your name, sir? Your full name?
Matt Huntsberger.
And he was sworn in, is that correct? Okay. How do you spell your last name?
Huntsberger. I have like two last names technically. Does that matter or just? Okay. It's Giles Huntsberger, hyphenated. Giles, Huntsberger.
Okay,
And Matthew with one T.
okay.
Good morning, Mr. Huntsberger.
Good morning.
So I want to start off with you by first of all asking you to tell the judge a little bit about your relation. Well, first of all, did you know Corey Jones?
Yeah, I met him about 4 months before the incident happened.
Okay. And you said about 4 months before the incident
Yeah, it
happened?
was on July 4th. We had played a music show together.
Okay. And so is that kind of how you guys came to meet
Yeah.
one another through music?
Yeah, through music, correct.
Okay. And what musical instrument do you play?
The bass,
All right. And what did Corey play?
drums.
All right. Now, when you met him, when you met Corey, were you guys in a band together, or you were just playing together for that night? that
He had
day that you
like
met him?
filled in. Oh, that night.
Yeah.
I was just filling in for his band Future Prez that night.
Okay. When you met Corey, you said you had met him a few months prior. I believe you indicated it was like back in July.
Yeah.
Did you hang out with him often?
From time to time, yeah, just mostly through the music. I would go out to watch him play and stuff like that.
All right. And what kind of person was he?
He was really mellow, just down to earth, kind of just really nice guy, you know.
Was he confrontational at all?
No, definitely.
See, the kind of guy who would start a fight?
No, definitely not.
Do you know what he did for a living?
I believe he was like, he told me he was a home inspector for the city of, was it either Boynton or Delray?
Speak a little bit louder, just so we
Oh, okay. City inspector for, I think it was Boynton Beach.
Okay. Did you, during the time that you guys, for the few months that you did know him, did there come a point where you all would start to kind of play in a band together?
Yeah, he the first night I met him, he played with my band, and then I played with another band as well, and I was playing with them, so we played in multiple bands together, correct.
Okay. And how often during that basically 4-month period would you say that you guys played together?
Maybe like five shows or so, 5 or 6 shows.
All right, all right. Now, it was a short period of time.
Yes.
But did you come to know him well during that short period of time?
I mean, for the amount of time, I mean, yeah, for what you can, you know. I mean, like through music, you kind of get a stronger connection with people quicker than just you know what I mean, normally.
And aside from playing in a band, where did Corey ever talk to you about where else he played?
Yeah, like the church. We played with.
Judge, I'll move on.
I'm sorry?
I said I'll move on.
Okay, go on.
So you were aware that he actually played in other places?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And before we move on with that night, I want to show you what is going to be States 5. Judge, may I approach the witness?
Sure.
I'm going to show you what is States 5 and ask you to recognize this photograph.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
It's Corey.
Okay. And does this photograph fairly and accurately depict the way Corey looked the last night that you saw him?
Yes.
Judge, at this time, say welcome to evidence States 5.
No objection? Okay, Exhibit 5 comes into evidence. Photo?
And Judge, for your purposes, for the court's purposes, this is States 5. Now, the night of, I want to take you fast forward to October 17th, leading into October 18th of 2015.
Okay.
Okay, you recall that time period?
Yes.
All right. Now, on October 17th, what were you scheduled to do that night with Corey, if anything?
We had a gig at, I think the place was called Johnny Mangoes, and it was in Jupiter.
Okay. And you said Johnny Mangoes?
I believe that was in there. I haven't played there since, so I'm not sure if that's the exact name, but yeah.
Okay. And you guys were going to go and play together, though?
Yeah, with like 2 other people, yeah. There's 4 of us that night.
Okay. And did you go and play?
Yes.
All right. Now, while you were there, how long would you say you stayed and you played?
I think it was 10 to 1 that night.
All right. And after you left, well, while you were there, before I get to after you left, while you were there, other than playing music for the venue where you guys were, did you do anything else? Did Corey do anything else while he was there? Did you guys have a couple of drinks or something like that when you were there?
No, I mean I didn't drink that night. No.
Okay. So around 1 o'clock, did the event end?
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
Okay. And now, once the event ended at 1 o'clock, what did you guys do?
We just packed up and just took off like about a half hour later.
Were you traveling in separate cars?
Yes.
And did you go straight home?
Yes.
Do you know where Corey was going?
He was going home too. Yeah.
Okay. At some point in time, once you arrived at home, did you receive a phone call?
Yeah, he called me about. I was literally just got home, probably like 5-10 minutes. He's like, my car broke down, so I went and tried to help him out.
Okay. Then once you received the phone call that his car had broken down, did you leave your house?
Yeah, right away. Yeah, I had to go up to Donald Ross because he was on that exit where you couldn't get to him where he was at. So I had to drive up to Donald Ross, turn around, and then come back.
Okay. When you got there, when you made, so you kind of had to make a U and go back or get off?
I had to go like 95 north and then make a U-turn to get to where he was at. Yeah, I was on Blue Heron, living on Blue Heron down that way at the time.
Okay. So were you able to spot his vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was right off he told me where he was. He was right off the exit.
When you got there, what was he doing?
He was just trying to mess with the engine. He was just trying to get it started. He was starting it. I went and looked. I don't know anything about cars, so I looked at it, but it just wasn't going on. Nothing was happening with it, and I tried to start it, and vice versa.
Okay. Did you guys kind of take measures into your own hands to try to fix the vehicle? Did you do anything to try to get it started other than try to crank the car up?
Yeah, he had mentioned that something with his oil sensor light, and he said that he was trying to get some oil, so I went to the store. I got 2 bottles of oil, one at a time. We tried one, and that didn't work, so we tried another, and that's it, yeah. And then, we tried to call AAA and everything like that. I actually offered him, to call AAA and all that stuff. He said he was all set. He said he had the roadside assistance come in, and he said I offered him to give him a ride home. He said he didn't want to leave his equipment in the car, so at that point, I was there about 45 minutes. I assumed AT&T was on their way, the roadside assistance. Actually, we called the road rangers as well, but they weren't able to tow him out of there, and they weren't able to do anything. So.
Okay, all right. So when you left him there with him using his own roadside assistance that he actually had himself.
Yeah, he said he had some service through his job, and I offered him, because he was on hold forever, I was just like, this is called AAA, because I had AAA too, but he said no, he said he's fine with just using that system. So.
Okay. So while you were there, he made the phone call to roadside assistance?
He was on hold with him for a while, and then I think someone called him, and I think like he got disconnected and he had to recall him or something like that. Something similar to that happened.
Okay. And you said that he had his band, his equipment in the back of his vehicle.
Yeah,
what was that equipment?
He had like a drum set, and I think like he might have had one of those rolling like drum pad things too as well. He said he had about $3,000 to $5,000 worth of stuff. That's why, because I was like, oh, let me just give you a ride home, and we'll just get, you know, whenever they come, they'll just tow your car there. And he's like, no, I don't want to leave the equipment. So
Okay.
he didn't want to leave the equipment, and because I know I guess he had church in the morning, so he just trying to get there, just trying to get him home, you know.
Okay. So now, when you left him, Mr. Huntsberger, at some point later on that day, did you learn that something had happened?
I didn't find out about it till Monday at work. Someone had sent me a message on Facebook about it.
Okay. All right. And that's the first that you learned that he had been
Yeah. Yeah, that was
he had
the
been
first.
killed.
Yes. I was shocked.
Judge, may I have a moment, please?
Sure.
Thanks. I have nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Huntsberger.
Okay, Mr. Richardson, cross-examination, sir?
Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning, how you doing?
You met Mr. Jones in July. This
Yes.
incident occurred in October.
Yes.
You played together several times, but this was actually the first gig that you actually played together as a band, right?
No. We played multiple gigs together.
Okay. Did you remember giving a deposition in this case?
What's that?
Do you remember giving a deposition
Yeah.
in this case?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take a look at it. It's the transcript of the sworn audio statement, October 19th, 2015. I'll show you a copy of it, sir. May I approach the witness?
Sure.
What I've handed you, sir, is a transcript of a sworn audio statement that you gave to Detective Smith on October 19th of 2015. Take a look at it and see if you recollect giving that statement. Have you ever seen a transcript of that statement before?
No.
Have you ever listened to the audio of the statement that you gave?
No.
Okay. Well, just let us know when you have come to the decision whether you recognize it.
I mean, I remember giving it. I mean, I don't know.
You remember giving,
You want me to just brief through this, or?
whatever makes you comfortable in terms of telling us whether or not you remember giving that statement.
Yeah, I remember giving.
Okay. Could you turn to page 11, please? Starting on page 11, line 2 through line 5.
Line 5?
Well, 11, line 3 through line 5.
Okay.
Do you remember telling the detective Smith in that case, I don't know him that well. I have only known him since July 4th. That was the first gig I ever played with him.
Yeah, that was the first gig with that band. There's multiple bands we played with, so yeah.
Okay. You didn't clarify that, though, when you talked to Detective Smith.
I didn't
did
think
you?
it was that important.
Okay. You had told us on direct examination that you played at Johnny Mango's, and you said that you did not drink that night. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you a copy of an audio transcript that you gave to, transcript of an audio statement that you gave to other investigators on January 25th, 2016.
All right.
Once again, do you remember giving a statement to other investigators, I think Ellen Thomas and Larry Cola Giovanni? Two other agents?
Yep.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you turn to page 6, please?
Okay.
Go all the way to the bottom, line 24.
Yeah.
You told them that you had 1 or 2 beers, didn't you?
Okay.
Yes?
I guess, yes. I have 1 or 2 beers, no beer. It's basically the same thing.
No beers and 2 beers is the same thing?
I mean, I wasn't getting drunk, was the whole thing.
My question to you is, no beers and 2 beers, that's the same thing?
No, okay, so it's not, no.
Okay. So you did in fact have 2 beers?
Yeah, maybe 1 or 2.
Okay. And in addition to that, you smoked marijuana, didn't you?
Yeah,
Okay. With Mr. Jones?
yeah.
Okay. You went out to the car to smoke a cigarette, but actually you guys were smoking a joint of marijuana.
Yeah.
May I have a moment?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very, no further questions.
State?
Mr. Huntsberger, whether you had 1 or 2 beers, whether you smoked a joint or you didn't smoke a joint,
Yeah.
did that have anything to do with whether or not Corey's car was broken down on the interstate?
No, nothing.
Was his car broken down?
Yes, his car was broken down.
Did that have anything to do with the marijuana?
No,
Did it have anything to do with the beers?
no.
No, nothing further, Judge.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes.
Was Corey Jones smoking marijuana that night?
Yeah, we smoked.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not from the state, no.
Nothing, no, you don't.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Sure.
Retrieve the transcripts, Your Honor.
Yes, sure. State?
Yes, Your Honor. State would call Clinton Jones Jr. to the stand, ma'am.
Okay.
You solemnly swear or affirm that evidence you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You may inquire, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
If you would, please state your full name and spell your last name.
Clinton Jones, Jones,
And what's your date of birth, sir?
9/20/80.
And how are you employed?
Personal trainer and chef.
And what county are you residing in at this time?
Lake Worth,
Here in
Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County, sorry.
Yes, sir. And you, of course, knew Corey Jones, sir?
Yes, my brother.
And were you close with your brother?
Yep.
Do you remember his phone, one of his phone numbers to be 561-573-2815?
Yeah.
How often would you talk with your brother, sir?
I live with my brother, so pretty much every day, you know. If it's not every day, it's every other day.
Obviously, you knew what type of man that he was.
Yeah.
You saw him, the way he treated other people and the way he interacted with other people on a regular basis.
Yes.
Did you meet his friends and even sometimes share the same friends?
Yeah, some of the friends was the same because we played music, you know. So, and then there's some friends that I didn't know, you know, because he was out all the time, you know, and stuff like that. So, but he did have his friends that he had, you know. He had his own life, and you know.
Obviously, he also worked.
Yep.
And who did he work with, sir?
Housing
Work for.
Housing Authority of Derry. Actually, it was Derry Beach.
And was your brother left or right-handed, sir?
He was left-handed.
And was he ambidextrous so he could use both hands, or was he really predominantly just use his left hand?
Predominantly left-handed, I would say. Not too much of, I can't remember him like too much using the right unless it's, I don't even know, but I know he's left-handed, and that's what he basically goes off of. If I'm right-handed, he always going to go opposite. I know that, you know, with left-hand people, when they say go right, they really mean left a lot of times, and he does that a lot of times when we drive and stuff like that, so I know what he really mean. But, yeah, he was left-handed, though.
Right with his left hand?
Yeah, everything, pretty much.
Eat with his left hand? Pick up objects predominantly with his left hand?
Yeah.
And I know you talked about him playing music. Who did he play music for? Was it bands, church, a lot of different things?
Pretty much anybody who needed a musician, a drummer. He played churches, bands, conventions, concerts, Pretty much anywhere. Anywhere was music, he was trying to play the drums. No, that was his connection.
And was he a regular player at the church?
Yeah.
And that's the conventional church on Sundays playing music?
Shoot, multiple churches. I mean, he played at my granddaddy church, my dad's church if he needed to, churches in Miami, pretty much anywhere. He just plays music everywhere. He's a professional musician, so.
And you're aware of the vehicle that he drove, sir?
Yeah.
What type of vehicle?
That Sonata, Hyundai.
Like a SUV?
Yeah, SUV.
And he also owned drums, sir?
Yes.
Where would he keep his drums?
Yeah, he had just, well, he had been living with me for pretty much his whole life, and he just had moved into an apartment maybe like 4 to 5 months prior to this happening. The drums is at my house, you know, it's all set up like they are right now, you know, and whenever he get ready to play, he just break them down and put them in his car and go do what he need to do.
And those drums, are they expensive?
Yes.
Thousands of dollars?
Yeah, I bought him his first set. I bought him that set when I was in the NFL. I was playing with Cleveland. That was his thing that he wanted me to get him, and so I bought that.
How much did it cost?
Approximately, back then it was almost like $5,500, and everything else he wanted the base set of it, and everything else he pretty much worked to get, as far as like his extra accessories.
So he added to it after you bought him that kit?
Yeah, he added to it a lot. He added all the little drum things, and yeah, he added to it.
And you had said you bought it for him back when you were in the NFL? So
Yeah, that was like 2004, 2004. He got it.
And at one point, were you a professional football player for the NFL?
Yes.
And what, do you play for the Browns and the
Played for
Patriots?
the Browns, Patriots, Seattle Seahawks, Kansas City, and Denver Broncos.
And were you aware that your brother owned a firearm?
Yeah, I found that out like that Saturday. I found that out that Saturday. He came by the house, I guess from getting it. I don't know if he had just got it that day or whatever, but I know he got it. He showed me that Saturday when he had it.
That Saturday right before?
Yeah, right before he was actually about to go do his gig, like, because he had to be down there at a certain time to set up. So we knew he was going to be coming home late, like in the morning, because that's pretty much what happens, you know, when he does those gigs.
And to your knowledge, was working for the housing authority, was that sometimes you'd be in tough neighborhoods around tough people?
I mean, I know one of the reasons why he got the gun is because he wanted to protect his belongings, and another thing was he didn't really have to I think he put it like on a payment plan, in which he was also building up his credit, because he does that. Like he'll go buy a lamp or something and pay on it just to try to fix his credit and stuff like that. But yeah.
So you're aware that he owned the firearm to protect his belongings?
Yeah. I know he never had a gun before that. I can't recall him actually shooting a gun. I know when he showed me the gun, he never touched it. It was still in the box. He opened up his card.
Judge, I'm going to object. His answers are unresponsive, and the counsel's leaving.
Okay, just direct your witness, Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, sure. So when he showed it to you, it was still in the box, sir?
Yeah, it was in a box. It was he showed me on his seat.
And you previously said you're not aware of your brother having really any type of familiarity with firearms?
Nah.
And
Objection,
Oh,
Judge.
what's the objection?
This is all hearsay.
well, it's actually his personal interactions with his brother and what he would see and see him do and not do.
He can testify to what he observed. Sure.
So once again, you're not aware of your brother having any type of familiarity with firearms, correct?
Nah.
And you already testified that you're aware of all the people that a lot of people he was around, known him for years. Do you have any type of reputation for any type of violence?
Oh, I can't find nobody. No, not for violence. We respect everybody pretty much. The way we was raised. I mean, he's not a violent person.
And you talked to your brother, obviously, that Saturday. Did you talk to him that night, the 17th, and also in the early morning hours of the 18th, that
Yeah,
Sunday?
I talked to him I'll never forget this time because it just stick with me. He called me at like 2:52 in the morning. I was still waiting for him to come home. I knew he was gonna be home late. I was playing a video game, waiting for him, and he called me. He was like, he's broke down.
Seriously, Judge.
Sustained.
And, sir, is it your understanding that you're the last person to speak with Corey Jones while he was alive? Outside of of course, the AT&T person.
Yeah,
And were you aware that he had a gig the next morning?
yeah.
When you spoke with Mr. Jones, did you make any offers to come to where he was at?
I actually gave him Palm Beach towing, and I did offer to come get him, but he's not going to leave his drums anywhere. He's not.
And
He's
why did
definitely.
you offer to come get him? Was there something wrong with his car?
It was something wrong with his. I think it was his gas, because the last time I drove his car, his gas meter. I think his gas meter. Maybe it's oil, but I know there's something wrong with his gas meter in the car, and that made it. He might have ran out of gas, and not knowing.
Either way, he's broken.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know the gas meter thing was messed up because he always used to talk about it. So I don't know.
So regardless of what was wrong, he was broke down.
He was. Yeah.
And you offered to come get him?
Yeah, but that wasn't happening. He wasn't going to leave those drums. So
And you said that he was not willing to leave his drums there?
no.
Judges leave. It's hearsay as well.
Okay, just open-ended questions, Mr. Fernandez. Sustained. Go ahead.
And you did not go get him, correct?
No,
And why did you not go get him?
because he said, what?
It goes to his present sense impression, Your Honor.
Overruled for now. Go ahead. You can ask that question.
Why did you not go get him, sir?
Because he told me he was okay and he was going to be handled by roadside assistance.
And when you spoke to him, what was his demeanor?
He was calm. He was relaxed. He wasn't. I didn't feel like he was threatened or anything like that. He was typical Corey.
Did he sound impaired to you?
Nah, it was typical Corey. Just he's stranded. It was more.
Angry to you at all?
Nah, it was no anger because we're home. I mean, in Palm Beach County. I mean,
Have you listened to the AT&T roadside assistance phone call that your brother was on when he was killed?
yes,
And do you recognize his voice on that phone, sir?
yes,
And the manner in which he's speaking at first, is that the way he normally talked?
yeah,
And was he, once again, consistent to how he was when he talked to you before, being calm and not aggressive?
he was definitely not aggressive. I mean, he don't have that in him. He may be more scared than anything.
And obviously, you're aware that sometime right after that, your brother was killed by the defendant, correct?
Yeah, I didn't find that out until 5:30, like p.m. the next day.
Obviously, you attended the funeral of your brother.
Yes.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, cross-examination.
Good morning, sir. You testified on direct that you knew your brother had bought a gun either that day or before that, right?
Yeah.
And you also knew you lived with your brother?
Not at that moment. He had moved out maybe like 4 months before that.
Okay, so you had lived with your brother previous to this
Yeah,
incident?
yeah,
Yes?
yes.
All right. And how long had you lived with him?
He lived with me since 2000, like 4 months out of that, 14 into 15 going into that, 4 months out of that. You feel me? He had just moved out.
Okay. Were you aware that he had bought a gun previous to this gun?
No,
Okay.
no.
So you testified that your brother was a musician, correct?
Yes.
And you saw him play?
Mm-hmm.
And he was a drummer, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen him drum
Yeah.
numerous times?
Mm-hmm.
And he drums with his left hand,
Yeah.
and he drums with his right hand, right?
It's drumming. It's left hand.
They use both hands, correct?
Use both hands.
All right. Are you aware that the drum that he was set up, when he set it up, it was set up for a right-handed drummer, wasn't it?
Yeah, but he plays left hand.
Okay. But it was set up right-handed aspect, correct?
Yeah, that's a typical drum. You know, that's a typical drum setup because, I mean, my uncle played drums, and in the church, that's the way the drums were set up. So he had to maneuver himself not to play righty because it was set up righty. So he plays lefty, and that's the way he played.
No further questions, thank you.
Redirect?
Is there a question in your mind that your brother predominantly used his left hand for everything except playing the drums?
Yeah.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Just one quick question, 2 questions under recross.
Regarding?
I opened up 0 additional areas to have a recross, Your Honor.
Is it about the left-hand, right-hand situation?
No further questions.
Okay. All right. We are going to take a break for lunch now, everybody. Okay? We're going to come back at 1:15. Okay? Thank you, sir. You can sit down, sir. Thank you.
Court is in recess.